Chapter 12 of Lotus Buds. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Katie Grace. Lotus Buds by Amy Wilson CARMICHAEL. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. To What Purpose? Among the closest of our little children's friends is one whose name I may not give, lest her work should be hindered, for in this work of saving the little ones, though we have the sympathy of many, we naturally have to meet the covert opposition of very many more, and it is not well to give too explicit information as to the centers of supply. This dear friend's help has been invaluable. From the first she has stood by us, interesting her friends, Indian and English, in the children, and stirring them into practical cooperation. Then, when the babies have been saved and had to be cared for and sent off, she made nothing of the trouble, and above all, she has never been discouraged. Sometimes things have been difficult. Some have doubted, and many have criticized, and even the kindest have lost heart. This friend has never lost heart. For not all the chapters of the Temple Children's Story can be written down and printed for everyone to read. We think of the unwritten chapters, and remember how often, when the pressure was greatest, the thought of that undiscouraged comrade has been strength and inspiration. No one, except those who, in weakness and inexperience, have tried to do something not attempted before, can understand how the heart prizes sympathy just at the difficult times, and how such brave and steadfast comradeship is a thing that can never be forgotten. Among the babies saved through this friend's influence was one with a short but typical story. The little mite was seen first in her mother's arms, and the mother was standing by the wayside as if waiting. Something in her attitude and appearance drew the attention of an Indian Christian whom our friend had interested in the work, and she got into conversation with the mother, who told her that her husband had died a fortnight before the baby's birth, and she, being poor though of good caste, was much exercised about the little one's future. How could she marry her properly? She had come to the conclusion that her best plan would be to give her to the temple, so she was even then waiting till someone from a temple house would come and take her little girl. The news that such a child is to be had soon becomes known to those who are on the watch, and it is improbable that the mother would have had long to wait. The Christian persuaded her to give up the idea, and the little babe was saved and sent to us. On the journey to Dohnavur, a temple woman chanced to get into the carriage where the little baby slept in its basket. There was nothing to tell who she was, and like the other women in the carriage, she was greatly interested in its story. But presently it became evident that her interest was more than superficial. She looked well at the baby and was quiet for a time. Then she said to the Christian who was bringing it to us, "I see it is going to be an intelligent child. Let me have it. I will pay you." The Christian, of course, refused, and asked her how she knew it was going to be intelligent. "Look at its nose," said the temple woman. "See, here is money," and she offered it. "Let me have the baby. You can tell your Missy Amal it died in the train." Sometimes our babies have to run greater risks than this in their journeys south to us. The distances which have to be covered by train and bullock cart are great, and the traveling tedious. And there are many delays and opportunities for difficulties to arise, so that when we know a baby is on its way to us, we feel we want to wrap it round in prayer, so that thus invisibly enveloped it will be protected and carried safely all the way. Once a little child travelling to us from a place as distant, counting by time, as Rome is from London, was observed by some Brahmin men who happened to be at the far end of the long third-class carriage. Our worker, who was alone with the child, noticed the whispering and glances toward her little charge, and wrapped it closer in its shawl, and, as she said, looked out of the window as if she were not at all afraid, and prayed much in her heart. Presently a station was reached. The language spoken there was not her vernacular, but she understood enough to know something was being said about the baby. Then an official appeared, and there was a cry quite understandable to her. "A Brahmin baby! That Christian there is kidnapping a Brahmin baby!" The official stopped at the carriage door. She was pushed towards him amidst a confused chatter. A crowd gathered at the door in a moment, and someone shouted into Meal above the excited clamor on the platform, "Pull her out! A Christian with a Brahmin baby!" Then did my heart tremble. I held the baby tight in my arms. The man in clothes said, "Show it to me." And he looked at its hands, and he looked at its feet, and he said, "This is no child of yours." But as I began to explain to him, the train moved, and he banged the door, and I praised God. India is a land where strange things can be accomplished with the greatest ease. As all went well, it is idle to imagine what might have been, but we knew enough to be thankful. Among the unwritten chapters is one which touches a problem. There are some little children, often the most valuable to the temple women, who cannot live with us, but can live with them, because the baby in the temple house is nursed by a foster mother for the sake of merit, and thus it is given its best chance of life, whereas with us it is impossible to get foster mothers. Indian children of the castes approved for the service are not, as a class, as robust as others. The secluded lives of their mothers, and the rigid rules pertaining to widows, girl children born after the mother becomes a widow are, as has been seen, in special danger, partly account for this. And in other cases there are other reasons. Whatever the cause, however, the effect is manifest. The baby is seldom the little bundle of content of our English nurseries. It may become so later on, if all goes well. Often it lives upon its birth strength for 4 months, or less, and then slips away. We have often hesitated about taking such babies, and then we have found that by refusing one who is likely to die, we have discouraged those who were willing to help us, and the next baby in danger has been taken straight to the house where its welcome was assured. So we have hardly ever dared to refuse, and we have taken little fragile things whose days we knew were numbered unless a foster mother could be found, for it seemed to us that death with us was better than life with the temple people. And also we have not dared to risk losing the next who might be healthy. "One dies, one lives," say the temple women in their wisdom, and take all who are suitable in caste and in appearance. "She will be fair," or "she will be intelligent," settles the matter for them. They give the baby a chance. Should we do less? One night I woke suddenly with the feeling of someone near, and saw, standing beside my bed out on the veranda, the friend who has sent us so many little ones. She had something wrapped in a shawl in her arms, and as she moved the shawl, a thin cry smote me with a fear, for a baby who has come to stay does not cry like that. It was a dear little baby, one of the type the temple women prize, and will take so much trouble to rear. The little head was finely formed, and the tiny face, in its minute perfection of feature, looked as if some fairy had shaped it out of a cream rose petal. Alas, there was that look we know so well and fear so much, that look of not belonging to us, the elsewhere, other-world look. But we could not do this work at all. We would not have the heart to do it if we did not hope. So we go on hoping. The baby filled the next half-hour, for a thing so small can be hungry and say so. And together we heated the water and made the food, till satisfied at length that her little charge was comfortable, our friend lay down to rest. Jesus, therefore, being weary with his journey, sat thus on the well. There is something in the utter weariness after a long, hot journey, ending with 7 hours in a bullock cart over rough tracks by night, which always recalls that word of human tiredness. How I wished that the morning were not so near as I saw my friend asleep at last. A few hours later she was on her homeward way, and we were left with our hopes and our fears and the baby. For 3 weeks we hoped against fear, till there was no room left for any more hope, or for anything but prayer that the child might cease to suffer. And after a month of struggle for life, the tiny, tossing thing lay still. To what purpose is this waste? Was it strange that the question came again to ourselves, and to others too? Our dear friend's toilsome travelling, a journey equal in expenditure of time to one from London to Vienna and back again, and very much more exhausting, the faithful nurse's patience, the little baby's pain, and all the love that had grown through the weeks, and all the efforts that it had failed, the very train ticket and bandy fare, was it all as spilt water on the ground? Was it waste? We knew in our hearts it was not. The dear little babe was safe, and it might be that our having taken her, though she was so very delicate, would result in another, a healthy child, being saved, who, if she had been refused, would never have been brought. This hope comforted us, and we prayed definitely for its fulfillment, and it was fulfilled. For shortly after that little seed had been sown in death, information came from the same source through which she had been saved, that another child was in danger of being adopted by Temple women, and this information would not have been given to our friend had the first child been refused. Nundini we called this little gift. The name means happiness. Sometimes, in moments of depression and disappointment, we go for change of air and scene to the Primalia nursery, and the baby Nundini, otherwise Dimples, of whom more afterwards come running up to us with her welcoming smile and outstretched arms, while others with stories as full of comfort tumble about us and cuddle and nestle and pat us into shape. Then we take courage again and ask forgiveness for our fears. It is true our problems are not always solved, and perhaps more difficult days are before, but we will not be afraid. Sometimes a sudden light falls on the way, and we look up, and still it shines. And what can we do but follow the gleam? End of chapter 12.